All right, here we go. Chapter 3, the peopling of the field. This should be very interesting. We are way up here on the top of the chart at the monads and the coming forth of the monads. So this is going to be, this is creation. So we're seeing some incredible stuff here. Okay, let's go. When the fivefold field is ready, now that's everything down below the level of the monad, the plane of the monad there, right? When the fivefold field is ready, when the 5 planes, each with its 7 subplanes, and this is what we're looking at here on the chart on the right, dense, liquid, gaseous, fourth ether, third ether, second ether, first ether. These are the 7 subplanes of the physical plane down here in the lower 3 worlds. And then we also have the spiritual triad, and together these planes make up these lower 5. Are completed so far as, when they're completed, as so far as their primary constitution is concerned, then begins the activity of the second logos, the builder and preserver of forms. His activity is spoken of as the second life wave, the pouring out of wisdom and love. The wisdom, the directing force needed for the organization and evolution of forms. The love, the attractive force needed for holding them together as stable though complex wholes. When this great stream of logic, life, or what we call logoic life, pours forth into the fivefold field of manifestation, it brings with it into activity the monads, the units of consciousness ready to begin their work of evolution, to clothe themselves in matter. Yet the phrase that the monads go forth is somewhat inaccurate. That they shine forth, send out their rays of life, would be truer. For they remain ever in the bosom of the Father, while their life rays stream out into the ocean of matter, and therein appropriate the materials needed for their energizing in the universe. The matter must be appropriated, rendered plastic, shaped into fitting vehicles. What a visual we're getting here. HPB has described their fourth shining in graphic allegorical terms, using a symbolism more expressive than literal meaning words. The primordial triangle, which, as soon as it has reflected itself in the heavenly man, the highest of the lower 7 disappears, returning into silence and darkness, and the astral paradigmatic man, whose monad, or atma, is also represented by a triangle, as it has to become a ternary in conscious Davichanic interludes. All right, that's pretty deep. That's from the Secret Doctrine. Let's see here. The primordial triangle, which as soon as it has reflected itself in the heavenly man, okay, we're looking at it over here on the right, right? Disappears into silence and darkness, the astral paradigmatic man, whose monad, atma, is also represented by a triangle, okay, as it has to become a ternary in conscious Davichanic interludes. That's like a dream state, more or less. You'd have to study David Chan, but let me look up ternary. Yeah, okay, so the ternary is also composed of 3 parts. Just wanted to make sure of that. The primordial triangle or the three-faced monad of will, up here at the top, wisdom and activity, as we're looking at, reflects itself in the heavenly man, right, down here at Atma, on the Atmic plane, and the Buddhic plane, as Atma Buddhi Manas, right, so now we have Atma Buddhi Manas, and that is the spiritual plane, the Buddhic plane, and the mental plane, and then returns into silence and darkness. Atma, often spoken of as the monad of the lower or astral man, has to become a ternary, a triple-faced unit, by assimilating Buddhi and Manas. And now we're looking at this spiritual triad here, right? The word reflection demands explanation here. Speaking generally, the term reflection is used when a force manifested on a higher plane shows itself again on a lower plane and is conditioned by a grosser kind of matter in that lower manifestation, so that some of the effective energy of the force is lost and it shows itself in a feebler form. As now used in a special instance, it means that a stream of the life of the monad pours forth, taking as the vessel to contain it an atom from each of the three higher planes of the fivefold field, the third, fourth, and fifth, thus producing the heavenly man. And here here's the heavenly man that we're talking about, the spiritual triad. Here are the permanent atoms that we're discussing here: the Atmic permanent atom, the Buddhic permanent atom, and the mental permanent atom. Thus producing the heavenly man, the living ruler, immortal, the pilgrim who is to evolve, for whose evolution the system was brought into being. Okay. As the mighty vibrations of the sun throw matter into the vibrations we call his rays, which express his heat, electricity, and other energies, so does the monad cause the atomic matter of the Atmic, Buddhi, and monastic planes surrounding him, as the ether of space surrounds the sun, to vibrate, and thus makes to himself a ray, triple like his own threefold nature. In this, he is aided by devas from a previous universe who have passed through a similar experience before. These guide the vibratory wave from the will aspect to the Atmic atom, and the Atmic atom vibrating to the will aspect is called Atma. They guide the vibratory wave from the wisdom aspect to the Buddhic atom, and the Buddhic atom vibrating to the wisdom aspect is called Buddhi. Also, they guide the vibratory wave from the activity aspect to the monastic atom, and the monastic atom vibrating to the activity aspect is called Manas. This is very detailed and explanatory of what we're looking at here, and how these words that we've heard reading the Ageless Wisdom are actually come about, and what their deeper meaning is. So very foundational here. Thus, Atma Buddhi Manas, the monad in the world of manifestation, is formed the ray of the monad beyond the fivefold universe. Here is the mystery of the watcher, the spectator, the actionless Atma, who abides ever in his triple nature on his own plane, and lives in the world of men by his ray, which animates his shadows, the fleeting lives on earth. And lives in the world of men by his ray, which animates his shadows, the fleeting lives on earth. The shadows do the work on the lower planes and are moved by the monad through his image or ray, at first so feebly that his influence is well near imperceptible, later with ever-increasing power. Atma Buddhi Manas is the heavenly man, the spiritual man, and he is the expression of the monad, whose reflected aspect of will is Atma, whose reflected aspect of wisdom is Buddhi, and whose reflected aspect of activity is Manas. Hence we may regard the human Atma as the will aspect of the monad ensouling an Akashic atom. The human Buddhi as the wisdom aspect of the monad ensouling a divine flame, an air atom. The human Manas as the activity aspect of the monad ensouling a fiery atom. So we got the Akashic atom, the air atom, and the fiery atom. Thus, in Atma Buddhi Manas, the spiritual triad, as we see over here, or the heavenly man, we have the three aspects or energies of the monad embodied in atomic matter, and this is the spirit in man, the Jiva Atma, or life self, the separated self. It is the germinal spirit, and in its third aspect, the baby ego. And that third aspect, reaching all the way down to the lower three worlds here, I guess. It is identical in nature with the monad, is the monad, but is lessened in force and activity by the veils of matter round it. This lessening of power must not blind us to the identity of nature. We must ever remember that the human consciousness is a unit, and that, though its manifestations vary, these variations are only due to the predominance of one or other of its aspects and to the relative density of the materials in which an aspect is working. Its manifestations, thus conditioned, vary, but it is itself ever one. Such part, then, of the consciousness of the monad as can express itself in a fivefold universe, enters at first thus into the higher matter of this universe, embodying itself in an atom of each of the three higher planes. Having thus shown forth and appropriated these atoms for his own use, the monad has begun his work. In his own subtle nature, he cannot as of yet descend below the Anapadaka plane. What's the plane up here? And he is therefore said to be in silence and darkness unmanifest. So this the term, just as a note here, the term Jiva Atma is of course equally applicable to the monad, but is more often applied to its reflection. let's see here. Therefore is said to be in silence and darkness, unmanifest, but he lives and works in and by means of these appropriated atoms, which form the garment of his life, on the planes nearest to his own. We may figure this action thus, and there we have this this chart that we're looking at, and prior to the completion, I guess, in its earlier stages. This spiritual triad, as it is often called, Atma Buddhi Manas, the Jiva Atma, is described as a seed, a germ of divine life, containing the potentialities of its own Heavenly Father, its monad, to be unfolded into powers in the course of evolution. This is the manhood of the divine Son of the first Logos, animated by the Godhead, the monad, a mystery truly, but one which is repeated in many forms around us. And now the nature which was free in the subtle matter of his own plane becomes bound by the denser matter, and his powers of consciousness cannot as yet function in this blinding veil. He is therein as a mere germ, an embryo, powerless, senseless, helpless, while the monad on his own plane is strong, conscious, capable, so far as his internal life is concerned. The one is the monad in eternity, the other is the monad in time and space. The content of the monad eternal is to become the extent of the monad temporal and spatial. This at present embryonic life will evolve into a complex being, the expression of the monad on each plane of the universe. All-powerful internally on his own subtle plane, he is at first powerless, fettered, helpless, when enwrapped externally in denser matter and unable to receive through it or to give out through it vibrations. But he will gradually master the matter that at first enslaves him. Slowly, surely, he will mold it for self-expression. He is aided and watched over by the all-sustaining and preserving second Logos until he can live in it fully as he lives above and become in his turn a creative Logos and bring forth out of himself a universe. The power of creating a universe is only gained according to the wisdom by involving within the self all that is later to be put forth. A Logos does not create out of nothing, but evolves all from himself, and from the experiences we are now passing through, we are gathering the materials out of which we may build a system in the future. But this spiritual triad, this Jiva Atma, which is the monad in the fivefold universe, cannot himself commence at once any separate self-directed activity. He cannot gather around himself any aggregations of matter as yet, but can only abide in his atomic vesture. The life of the second Logos is to him as its mother's womb to the embryo, and within this the building begins. We may, in very truth, regard this stage of evolution, in which the Logos shapes, nourishes, and develops the germinating life as being, for the heavenly man, or truly the heavenly embryo, a period corresponding to the antenatal life of a human being, during which he is slowly obtaining a body, which is nourished meanwhile by the life currents of the mother, and formed out of her substance. Thus also with the Jiva-Atma, enclosing the life of the monad, he must await the building of his body on the lower planes, and he cannot emerge from this antenatal life and be born until there is a body builded on the lower planes. The birth takes place at the formation of the causal body, when the heavenly man is manifested as an infant ego, a true individuality, dwelling in a body on the physical plane. A little careful thought will show how close is the analogy between the evolution of the pilgrim and that of each successive rebirth. In the latter case, the Jiva-Atma awaits the formation of the physical body, which is building as his habitation. In the former, the spiritual triads, as a collectivity, awaits the building of the systematic quaternary until the vehicle on the lowest plane is ready. All is a preparation for evolution rather than evolution itself. It is often termed involution. The evolution of the consciousness must begin by contacts received by its outermost vehicle. That is, it must begin on the physical plane. It can only become aware of an outside, I don't know what that says, impacts on its own outside. Until then, it dreams within itself as the faint inner thrillings ever outwelling from the monad cause slight outward tending pressures in the Jiva-Atma, like a spring of water beneath the earth seeking an outlet. Okay, we're going to pick back up now. I went and got a copy of the book. It is this copy here. It is slightly different from the format of this book. The copyright is obviously much newer for this one, but so far all the words seem to be exactly the same. This is from 2010. So, but I wanted to get it so we don't miss the sides of this over here. I don't know if I'm going to make sure we get all these words right. So here we go. Meanwhile, the preparation for the awakening, the giving of qualities to matter, that which may be likened to the formation of the tissues of the future body, is done by the life power of the second logos, the second life wave, rolling through plane after plane, imparting its own qualities to that sevenfold proto-matter. The life wave, as said above, carries the Jiva-Atmas with it as far as the atomic subplane of the fifth plane, the plane of fire of individualized creative power of mind. Here they each have already an atom, the monastic or mental veil of the monad, the logos, flooding these and the remaining atoms of the plane with his life. All these atoms forming the whole atomic subplane, whether free or attached to Jiva-Atmas, may rightly be termed monadic essence. But as in the course of evolution, presently to be explained, differences arise between the attached and the non-attached atoms. The term monadic essence is usually employed for the non-attached, while the attached are called, for reasons which will appear, permanent atoms. On a personal level, I'm going to need to read this again. because this is something that I really want to make sure is up front and not just being absorbed. I definitely want to understand, if possible, this here. So differences arise between the attached and the unattached or non-attached atoms. The term monadic essence is usually employed for the non-attached, while the attached are called for reasons which will appear. Okay, permanent atoms. We may define monadic essence as the atomic matter ensouled by the life of the second logos. It is his clothing for the vivifying and holding together of forms. He is clad in atomic matter, his own life as logos, separate from the life of Atma Buddhi Manas, in the man, separate from any lives on the plane, though he supports, permeates, and includes them all, is clothed only in atomic matter, and it is this which is connoted by the term of monadic essence. The matter of that plane, already by the nature of its atoms, capable of responding by vibrations to active thought changes, is thrown by the second life wave of consciousness into combinations fit to express thoughts, abstract thoughts in the subtler matter, concrete thoughts in the coarser, the combinations of the second and third higher subplanes constitute the first elemental kingdom. The combinations on the four lower subplanes constitute the second elemental kingdom. Matter is held in such combinations. In such combinations is called elemental essence and is susceptible of being shaped into thought forms. The student must not confuse this with monadic essence. One is atomic, the other molecular in constitution. So the monadic essence being the atomic and the permanent and the other molecular. Right. So the second life wave then rolls on into the sixth plane, the plane of water, of individualized sensation, of desire. The before mentioned devas link the jiva atma attached or permanent units of the fifth plane to a corresponding number of atoms on the sixth plane, and the second logos floods these and the remaining atoms with his own life, these atoms thus becoming monadic essence as explained above. The life wave passes onward, forming on each subplane the combinations fit to express sensations. These combinations constitute the third elemental kingdom, and the matter held in such combination is called elemental essence. As before, on the sixth plane is susceptible of being shaped into desire forms. And the matter held in such combination is called elemental essence. As before, on this sixth plane is susceptible of being shaped into desire forms. So elemental essence is thus seen to consist of aggregations of matter on each of the six non-atomic subplanes of the mental and desire planes, aggregations which do not themselves serve as forms for any entity to inhabit, but as the materials out of which such forms may be built. The life wave then rolls on to the seventh plane, the plane of earth, of individualized activities of actions. As before, the Jiva Atma attached or permanent atoms of the sixth plane are linked to a corresponding number on the seventh plane, and the second logos floods these and the remaining atoms with his own life, all these atoms thus becoming monadic essence. The life wave again passes onwards, forming on each subplane combinations fitted to constitute physical bodies, the future chemical elements, as they are called on the three lower subplanes. Looking at this work of the second life wave as a whole, we see that its downward sweep is concerned with what may fairly be called the making of primary tissues, out of which hereafter subtle and dense bodies are to be formed. We call, it has been called in some ancient scriptures a weaving, for such it literally is. The materials prepared by the third logos are woven by the second logos into threads and into clothes, of which future garments, the subtle and dense bodies, will be made. As a man may take separate threads of flax, cotton, silk, themselves combinations of a simpler kind, and weave these into linens, into cotton or silk cloth, these cloths in turn to be shaped into garments by cutting and stitching, so does the second logos weave the matter threads. Weave these again into tissues, and then shape them into forms. He is the eternal weaver, while we might think of the third logos as the eternal chemist. The latter works in nature as in a laboratory, the former as in a manufactory. These similes, materialistic as they are not to be despised, for they are crutches to aid our limping attempts to understand. The weaving gives to matter its characteristics, as the characteristics of the thread differ from those of the raw material, as the characteristic of the cloth differs from those of the threads. The logos weaves the two kinds of cloth of monastic matter, of mind stuff, and out of these will be made later the causal and the mental bodies. He weaves the cloth of astral matter, of desire stuff, and out of this will be made later the desire body. This is to say that the combinations of matter formed and held together by the second life wave have the characteristics which will act on the monad when he comes into touch with others and will enable him to act on them. So will he be able to receive all kinds of vibrations, mental, sensory, etc. The characteristics depend on the nature of the aggregations. There are 7 great types fixed by the nature of the atom, and within these innumerable subtypes. All this goes to the making of the materials of the mechanism of consciousness, which will be conditioned by all these textures, colorings, and densities. And this downward sweep of the life wave through the 5th, 6th, and 7th planes, downward till the densest matter is reached, and the wave turns at that point to begin its sweep upwards. We must think then of its work as that of forming combinations which show qualities, and so we sometimes speak of this work as the giving of qualities. In the upward sweep, we shall find that bodies are built out of matter thus prepared, but before we study the shaping of these, we must consider the 7-fold division of this life wave in its descent and the coming forth of the shining ones, the devas, the angels, the elementals, that belong also to this downward sweep. These are the minor gods of whom Plato speaks, from whom man derives his perishable bodies. And that is a lot to absorb for the day, I believe. I am going to call it there. I'm going to set on this for a while. This is some intense stuff. That should definitely be enough for all of us today to let set. And then we will do the second part of this, which is the third and fourth sections of this chapter, either later or tomorrow. We'll see. Well, all right. Yeah, we'll get back at it. Have a good one. Thanks.